Welcome to another segment of the Daniel chapter 12 study. The first two parts of this series were just to introduce the fact that Ellen G. White and the book of Revelation do not cancel any future prophetic timelines. In fact, in the quote that Ellen G. White says that there will be no definite tracing of time, if we look at her quote, she states there'll be no definite tracing of time, which means that in the future that there'll be no definite tracing of time, but there is still a time prophecy, which is marked by certain events in the end of time. I'd like to get into Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12 is not written in prophetic symbolism. It does not need to be decoded. But it does contain prophetic terminology, words and phrases, which need to be traced in the original Hebrew tongue or language, translated into modern language, cross-referenced for historical association, correlated with other prophetic passages, especially those of Mathew 24 and Revelation 13, which have references to the same end-time events. Therefore, we need to define the content of Daniel 12, determine the basic concept addressed therein, define the terminology, correlate it with related prophecies in Revelation, and define the concepts involved in this study. The following questions must be answered to discover the nature of the warning in Daniel chapter 12. What is the question of Daniel chapter 12? What is the answer given by Jesus? What is the abomination? What is the desolation? What is the abomination of desolation referred to in Daniel chapter 12? What is the dual application? What is the warning? When these questions are answered and the terminology defined, the reader will know what the warning is in the end-time prophetic timelines of Daniel chapter 12. First, the question, then the answer. What is the question of Daniel chapter 12? The disciples asked it. The saints who already inhabit heaven asked it, according to Daniel chapter 8:13. We are asking it. Daniel asked it in Daniel chapter 12. So, what is this question? According to Mathew chapter 24, 1-3, it says, "Tell us, what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?" Daniel chapter 12, 5 and 6, also a parallel, says, "Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood the other two saints, and one said, How long shall it be to the end? And Daniel chapter 12, 8 says, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? So the main question is, how long shall it be to the end? Daniel asked it. 500 years later, the disciples were asking the same question. It is a most vital question considered by students of Scripture in all the ages, but it comes urgent and consuming to those who are at the last generation. This question and its answer are the key to understanding the three timelines of Daniel 12. So, what is the answer? It is Jesus who answered the question. It was he who answered the disciples in Matthew 24, and again, it is Jesus, the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, who answered Daniel's question by giving him the three timelines found in Daniel chapter 12. The prophecies of Matthew chapter 24 and Daniel chapter 12 are related. Matthew 24:3, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world. They were plainly talking about the very end of the world. Daniel chapter 12:6. And one said to the man clothed in linen, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? The questions are related, and the answers are related. These are the answers. Matthew chapter 24:15 and 16. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in a holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Daniel chapter 12:11. And from the time that the daily shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Jesus is in the most specific manner connected the two events of Matthew 24 and the book of Daniel. His answer to the disciples' question plainly reveals this relationship when he told them and us to keep our eyes focused on the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, according to Matthew 24:15. The abomination of desolation, or transgression of desolation, was spoken of by Daniel in the following references: Daniel chapter 8:12, 13, 23, 9:27, 11:31, and 12:11. Each of these references is prophecy because the fulfillment would occur after Daniel's day. However, several of these references refer to different historical events, and therefore each must be given its correct application. There must be a definition and identification of the abomination of desolation before the relationship between Matthew 24 and Daniel 12:11 can be established, the prophetic timelines of Daniel 12 can be understood, and the historic events connected with their prophetic utterance. What or who was the abomination of desolation in the days of the disciples when they saw fulfillment? Who was it in the dark ages? Who will it be in the future? It is astonishing as to how many students of the scriptures will ignore the one who gave the prophecy, the one who repeated it to his disciples, and the one who so plainly identified it in another parallel passage of Scripture. It is incredible that so many ignore the words of Jesus and labor to construct some other complicated explanation to focus on some peripheral idea rather than on the specific identification as given by Jesus himself. This abomination of desolation was shown to Daniel in prophetic vision and given to him as in all other prophetic scripture from Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants the things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, or Daniel, in Revelation 1:1, about 500 years later. It was Jesus who again called attention to it in Matthew 24:15. And it is this same Jesus who identifies exactly who this abomination is in the parallel scripture of Luke 21:20 and 21. Matthew 24:15-16 says, When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand, then let them flee into the mountains. Luke 21:20 and 21 says, And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Matthew 24 refers to the abomination of desolation, but in Luke 21:20-21, the term is shortened simply to desolation. The meaning is the same, which is evidenced by similar context and admonition to flee into the mountains. In Matthew, Jesus referred to the enemy as the abomination, but in Luke, that abomination is simply spoken of as armies. The armies of Rome. It is the scripture itself in the very words of Jesus, by Bible cross-reference, which identifies the abomination to be Rome. For more than a century, God's Sabbath keepers have identified the abomination of desolation in Matthew and Daniel as Rome, first pagan, then papal, in its past and future historic Rome. The most recent comprehensive statement of definition is as follows. When the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet is set up, according to Matthew 24:15, Jesus' people are to pray that their flight from their persecutors will not be on the Sabbath day. Jesus was referring to Daniel 8:13 and 9:27. The little horn power of Daniel 8 represents both pagan and papal Rome. It first set up the abomination of desolation, according to Matthew 24:15, or the desolating sacrilege, when the Roman armies threatened Jerusalem on AD 66 to AD 70. The context of Jesus' statement indicates that a second fulfillment came in the Middle Ages, according to Matthew 24:15 to 29. Because Matthew chapter 24 is using historical events as a type of end-time event, we know that just prior to the second advent, the abomination of desolation once more will become a threat to the religious liberty of the people of God. Let us lay aside all conjecture and lines of reasoning and begin with the words of Christ. Permit the Bible to be its own expositor. Not until the Bible student gets this fundamental understanding is he ready to understand Daniel chapter 12. Enter into the mental notebooks of your mind. The abomination of desolation is, was, and will be Rome. It is imperative that those who seek to understand Daniel 12 align themselves with the historist school of interpretation. How have we, the historists, identified the abomination of desolation down through the centuries? Bible Commentary 5, page 499, it reads, "The abomination of desolation," if you see, of course, Daniel 9:27, Daniel 11:31, Daniel 12:11. The parallel passage in Luke reads, "When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh." That was according to Luke chapter 21:20. The event foretold is obviously the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans in AD 70. This is from Bible Commentary 5, page 499. Another Bible commentary is Bible Commentary 4841, says Daniel saw Rome first in its pagan imperial phase, warring against the Jewish people and the early Christians, and then in its papal phase, continuing down to our own day and into the future, warring against the true church. On this double application, we can look at verses 13 and 23 of Daniel chapter 8. And we can see plainly that the abomination of desolation is Rome. This has reference in part at least to the horrors and atrocities that were perpetuated upon the Jewish nation by the Romans in AD 70. This is from Bible Commentary 4855 of the Spirit of Prophecy. Historians have consistently understood the abomination of desolation to refer to Rome. This has been the consistent view of the Protestant Reformation and Adventists. When would-be prophetic expositors leave this platform, darkness and confusion are the inevitable result. Without the understanding, there can be no insight into the meaning of the three timelines of Daniel chapter 12. In summary of the Bible commentary quotations, it should be noted that Daniel, the prophet, saw the abomination of desolation to be Rome in its phase in the destruction of Jerusalem, Rome in the papal phase in the persecution of Christians from 538 to 1798, and Rome in the papal phase in the future persecutions. The abomination of desolation in its future persecution is described in Daniel 12:7 and 11 timeline prophecy. It is the warning of these future persecutions which Ellen G. White wrote. Let us read and study the 12th chapter of Daniel. It is a warning we shall all need to understand before the time of the end. Ellen G. White, Letters 161, July 30th, 1903. It is this warning in Daniel 12 which links it with the same warning found in Revelations chapter 13 and 14, when all the world wondered after the beast, all nations. This is also the warning found in Revelation 13:15.